emodels.co.uk. Make something awesome. Hey everyone, it's Foxx from Model Making Guru here. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to part 10 of our build of the there you go. Not even a minute in again, like last episode, and I've fluffed it. I'm really glad I don't have to say this title anymore. I really haven't been able to get any shorter. 22-inch 1/48 scale MP. Can I go home now? Can I go home? Tony! Right. MPC 22-inch 1/48 scale Eagle Transporter from Space 1999 for emodels.co.uk. Finally, it bodes well for the rest of the episode. Next thing I build for emodels is going to have a really short name. Anyway, yes, hello, welcome to episode 10. Hopefully the last episode, because we've got most of the stuff done now. If you remember in the last episode, we were getting all the painting and weathering done. That has now all been completed, and this puppy has been matte varnished. I was going to airbrush it using the Vallejo matte varnish. Was it the Vallejo or the AK Interactive? May have been the AK Interactive. I forget, it's not visible on my shelf and I can't remember. Anyway, I didn't in the end, because my airbrush was being a pig and wasn't cooperating. So what I did in the end, I managed to get a break in the weather. It was a nice, reasonably warm, reasonably sunny day. So I took it outside and blasted it with what is my personal favourite matte varnish, the Humbrol 49 acrylic matte varnish rattle can. You just get the can, you go blah, 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 and it's done. You don't need to fuss about with airbrushes or any thinking. It just slap it on.
Slap it on.
So Ted already. I'm not even 3 minutes in yet. What are we in? Like literally less than 2 minutes, and I've done Ted already. I don't know. So yes, that's all been done. It's all matte varnished. As before, the command module, the engines, and the shoulder pods are not glued on, nor is the roof part here. I have attachetated the feet. The feet are now on and nice and springy. I've not filmed that because putting the feet together, we've already done that in the last episode. I mentioned it in a previous episode, but actually getting them on there, it's like one step in the instructions. It's not hard. You can do that. Like I said at the start of this build, I'm only really focusing on the fiddly complicated stuff. The rest of it, I'm sure you can figure out. I've just painted in a couple of different shades of greys and some weathering and dry brushing metallics because I wanted them to look a little bit more worn than the rest, because these are the things that are in contact with ground. I didn't use the springs that come in the kit, like I said way back at the start. I got very kindly sent some replacement springs by one of my followers, which are slightly thinner gauge steel. I assume these are steel. Thinner gauge steel than the ones that come in the kit, which just means it sits a bit better on its haunches. It drops down a bit more and looks more convincing. There's nothing wrong with the springs that come with the kit. They're just a little tougher, a little sort of thicker, so it tends to sit a little bit high on its feet. So it doesn't really matter. But I was sent them, so I'm going to use them anyway. And I'm really pleased with how they come out. I've left this sat like this overnight just so all the feet can glue into place and the glue can set. I would recommend when you put the feet on, get them on there, do it a pod at a time, get the pods on there, put a little bit of weight over the top or on the sides here, and just leave it so everything can be nice and straight and true. Do it on a nice flat surface like I have my glass cutting board. Like I've said before, this desk isn't straight, so I want to make sure all the parts are straight and flush. Now when you do actually put this on a surface later, if it's not even, the feet will adjust because they're all differently sprung. That's fine, but I wanted all the parts to glue and set in place. So do it on a nice, perfectly flat surface like a solid cutting board or something like that. So that is all done. What is left to do? Not a huge amount. We have to put these windows in. We have to put all the thruster bells all over it. So that's the ones underneath, the ones at the back, and the little RCS units that go on each shoulder pod. So like a little box with 4 thrusters on it. We have to take the tape off the windows. That particular part is giving me nightmares because I've got this horrible feeling they've been on there for so long. It's going to be a pig to get off, and also I can't help thinking that somehow the clear PVA glue and canopy glue we put on the inside of the windows has perhaps glued it in place. I don't know. I'm not looking forward to taking that masking tape off. And then it's done. That's kind of it. I can't think of anything else that needs to be done after that. So what I'll do, I'll clear this away and I'll show you where I've got up to, because I have gone ahead and done some bits. So let me clear this beautiful, oh, we need to paint these bits dark as well. These 2 things on either side. Let me clear this beautiful puppy away. I don't want to give this back. I don't want to give it back. Can I keep it? Please? Okay, right, so let's show you what we're going to do. Before we go anywhere, I do need to apologise for the quality of the audio. You can hear me talking now. As you know, I film on my iPhone, currently an iPhone 6, previously an iPhone 5. And what I've always done for a long time is had a little lavalier mic plugged into the headphone jack, which is just about there. And it gave me broadcast quality audio, so I could have a little microphone on my lapel and it would sound great. Yeah, until they updated to iOS 11. The iPhone 7 onwards don't have a headphone jack because, obviously. So what they've decided is that in the software, they'll now stop any iPhone older than the iPhone 7, which has a headphone jack, supporting a microphone. So I plug my microphone in and it doesn't work. I only found this out like today. And I've been on to Apple and chasing up. Nobody seems to know why, and I've figured out it's basically because they've updated the software and it no longer does anything when you plug a microphone in here. So I've ordered a thing that goes in the lightning adapter, which is just about here, which means I can plug the microphone in. Hopefully that will work. If not, you're stuck with this crappy microphone for the next million years. So we'll see. Anyway, so apologies for the slightly echoey sound. It's gone back to the old days. If I move a head away from the phone, I'll go a bit quieter. So it's like going back in time, 2 years. Anyway, right, so, right, what have we got to do? I have primed with the UMP Black Primer, which is here. Let me find it. UMP Black Primer. Prime the windows for the Reconnaissance module. There's 2 sets of these. And they're fine. That's exactly as I want them, so we will leave those as they are. That's just primed in black. That's all I need. We have primed the bits that go inside the engine with that black as well. So again, they're gonna be flat black anyway. So I'm just gonna leave it as the primer because that's the colour it needs to be. And then we have these. Let me show you. Let me sing you the song of my people. We have these, all the thruster bells. Now look at that. Those are gorgeous. Now you might be wondering, why have I done them shiny black? Well, we're going to do these metallic colours, and I was umming and ahhing about how we're going to do that, and I'll talk about that in a second. But I wanted to show you this. Traditionally, when you do a metallic colour, you start with a glossy black, or whatever colour, but typically gloss black base colour. Typically, you'll prime it, then you'll do a gloss paint over the top, usually lacquer or enamel, and then you'll do your metallics. However, I didn't. I did this in one coat because I used the UMP Gloss Black Primer. This stuff is absolutely gorgeous. Look at that. Now, if you're used to using the normal matte primer, it's exactly the same technique. You literally just get it and spray it on. You don't think about it. It self-levels beautifully. I found the best way to get the primers on there, I'm using a 0.35 Neo Free Water airbrush. And if I rack the pressure up to about 23 to 25 psi, it comes out like a dream. Below that, it might struggle a little bit and you get spitty and you get a blockage. Above that, so 23 to 25 psi, maybe a little bit higher depending on your airbrush, it will come out like an absolute damn dream. So I literally just went like that and got it on, and it's self-leveled, and I've now got shiny, glossy black thruster bells. They even sound a bit metallic. So that is done. So what are we going to paint those with? Well, I did some tests. Spoons and a fork. So I did some tests, and what we're going to do is basically use a mixture of 2 things. We're going to use the Vallejo Acrylic Metal Colour 77.702 Duraluminium, or Duralanium as Anne likes to call it. You can also call it Duraluminum, if you're American and pronounce it wrong. Sorry. And you could call it duralumin. Technically that's correct, but that just sounds like something out of the Moomins. So duraluminium. It's not hard to pronounce, but nobody ever pronounces it rightly. So we're going to use that. It's basically a water-based acrylic metallic colour. And we're also going to use my old friend C1 Metalizer. Now, I did some tests. This is a powder, buffing powder. You put it on, buff it, metallic. Done. Chrome. Now, I did some tests. We have here, this is the duraluminium, just painted over the glossy black base. I didn't carefully put the gloss black, I just slapped it on and then put the duraluminium over it. Now, this has also had a coat of matte varnish because I was doing some other tests, and not a very good coat of matte varnish. So it's kind of a nice dull colour. But before the dull went on, it was reasonably shiny. Now, the weird stuff with this is, if you brush paint it in a small area, like a pipe or a tube, or I did it on the feet for under the Reconnaissance module, if you brush paint it on, it kind of looks a bit like this silver bit. It looks really silvery. But if you airbrush it, it kind of looks like that, but a bit more shiny because I've put matte varnish over it. So the airbrush came out a nice silver colour, but not particularly shiny, but that's fine. I also did a test with the C1 Metalizer, so this is gloss black with C1 Metalizer on top. And literally, again, like I say, you put the powder on, you buff it, and it's done. Now, again, believe it or not, this has also had a coat of matte varnish. Look at that. That's a coat of matte varnish over the C1 Metalizer, and it's still shiny metal. Wow. Now, I was quite fancying this, but it's a bit dark, and it'll look kind of toy-like. I want the thruster bells to look like sort of turned aluminium, ideally, because that's what they were on the real filming model. So what I did was, I took this fork. Now, this fork has been painted with the gloss black primer, then the duraluminium, and then over the top I did the C1 Metalizer, and it's got a bit of a lighter, brighter colour to it, and that's exactly what I'm after. That's not had any matte varnish or gloss varnish over it, I don't think, if I remember rightly. It's just those two, and there's a couple of little scrapes there where I've scraped it with the fingernail. This C1 Metalizer is actually really quite durable. It's quite amazing stuff. So that was gloss black primer, duraluminium, then C1. It just brightens up. You get a bit of reflectivity coming through from the duraluminium, and it means that the C1 has a bright, shiny colour underneath it, so it just makes it come out a little brighter than just the C1 on its own. So it's a mix and match. But then what we'll need to do is we'll need to kind of, because we then want to put some weathering on the engine bells, we'll need to gloss varnish over it, so it can take a gloss varnish. So what we're going to do, we're going to do the windows and all the other bits in a moment, but what I want to do first is get all the thruster bells out of the way. So I've got all the big thruster bells. These are for under the Reconnaissance module. Sorry, or they might be for under the ends. These are the big ass ones that go on the end. And I've also got all the little tiny ones that go on the little RCS thruster quads on the shoulder pods. So I've got all those two, and the little sort of thruster things on the nose as well, the 4 circles that go on the command module. So I've got all those glossed up. I didn't show gloss in them because you've seen me do gloss priming and everything before. So I've got those glossed up. Let's go and get them covered in the duraluminium. Duralanium. There you go, Ant. Duralanium. I actually like the phrase. I like the sound of that. Duralanium. It sounds kind of sci-fi. Anyway, I'll shut up. To the spray booth. And I will do voiceover for the spray booth, so it'll be better quality than this, because this is crappy iPhone microphone. God damn you, Apple. God damn you. Oh, you've made me spend money on an adapter to plug a thing, and I don't even know if it works. Oh. Okay, so there's not really a great deal to explain at this point. I mean, if you've used an airbrush, you know what you're doing. However, I will go through it, just for those who may not have tried this before, because I did do some experimentation and did find kind of the best way to get the best finish from this paint. If you drop some of the paint out onto your palette, you'll find it's a really thin metallic liquid. It's absolutely gorgeous. It looks like mercury. Which means you don't need to use a high pressure. Now I'm using my 0.35 Neo for a water here, and I found the best pressure to get the best, shiniest, silveriest and smoothest results is around about 18 psi for my setup. You do need to keep in mind that obviously your compressor and airbrush may make this a bit of a different scenario, so do some experimentation. I just found about 18 psi was good for this. Now the trick here is not just to blap the paint all over the part, because then you'll just end up with this kind of slightly dull silver thing with a visible grain. The trick is to build up the paint very, very slowly in misty layers. So get your pressure about 18 psi or equivalent, depending on your setup, and then start the paint over the surface. But in my case, I'm using a trigger, so I'm only pulling the trigger back a tiny amount from when paint starts to come out. and I'm just literally misting it on. So I'm getting a misty coat on the surface and then going back over it again and going back over it again. I'm not letting it dry between misty coats because that's where you do start to get some fluffiness and matteness. I'm just putting it on in misty coats, so what I can do is I can eyeball it and see how it's looking, and when it gets to about the right metallic shine that I want, I can stop. So that's my technique and that's my advice to you. Don't paint it on heavily, just mist it on a little bit and you should be good to go. You'll know when to stop. Okie dokie, right, while those thruster bells are drying nicely in the corner, it's quite good fun painting those. I'm looking at them, I'm not even sure now if I need to do the C1, but we'll wait and see, So, what's next? Well, while we're waiting for those to dry and I clear up this bit of glue here, we shall move on to the next step, which is to get these windows done in the Reconnaissance module. Now, what I'm looking for is that, basically. Nice, flat, black. There you go. Now, if you remember, these were clear parts. I've just primed them with the UMP primer. Now, what you could do is glue these into place by putting glue around the edges here. The risk is, though, when you push this down, it's going to go and splidge everywhere. So we're going to do a slightly different method. Now, when you get these parts off the sprue, they are clear parts, so when you snip them off the sprue, there'll be fragments and they never cut nicely. But you're not going to see this outside edge ever. So all you need to do is just hack them off the sprue with the nippers, dead carelessly, just try not to go into the edge. And then when you've got a little bit of a nub left, just hack it away as I knock the camera, hack it away with your craft knife and just get it smooth, just so it fits more than else. You're not going to see that, so aesthetics don't matter. So what do we do? Dead easy. The best way to do this without getting glue everywhere, we're going to use two types of glue. We're going to use, first of all, we are going to use PVA, like we did on the windows for the command module, but the first one we're going to use is good old Revell Contactor Clear. Now, you might have the micro scale, micro crystal clear, or whatever it's called. That's very similar, same stuff. I think this is just thin PVA, but we're going to use this. It dries clear and shiny, and if you do it the right way, when you put the piece on, you're not going to have any glue splooging out, so that'll stay flat and black, and that's what you want, no blobs of glue. So instead of putting glue around the edge, we're going to put the piece in first, to make sure it's in, make sure it looks good. Yep, it's all lined up. And then we're going to put the glue on top, and we're going to put the glue over the joint and around the edge and over the middle. Now, if you've ever used this stuff before, you know, you use this stuff for a little bit and you put it away to one side. When you come back to it, you're like, oh, can't get the lid off, can't get the lid off. And then eventually you get the lid off, and what's happened is the glue that's been exposed to air has set. But you get the lid off, and what you get inside is this. It's like PVA, it's stretchy and it's sticky, and you have to kind of really pull it out of the lid, and the lid comes away perfectly clean. This is the beauty of things like canopy glue or clear PVA based glue, that kind of thing, or transparent glue for clear parts. It's like PVA, it dries and crusts over and holds things in place by sheer stick, but if you need to, you can peel it off and the parts can come out. So if you're making a model airplane and you want to put the canopy on, but you don't want to glue it in place permanently, let's say you want to put it on so you can spray the outside, but you need to take it off again to do some last bits on the inside or whatever, you can stick it down with this kind of clear PVA or canopy glue or contactor clear or micro scale crystal clear, because you can pull it back off again. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue this on. When this is dried, I'm then going to give myself extra security by going over this whole thing with a load of PVA glue, just more stuff to stick it in place. But what I'm going to do when it's all finished is not glue this into place on the model, just in case anybody ever knocks it and the window falls in. If I glue this in place, you're knackered, you can never fix it. But if I just put these on loosely, because they're going to be on display, they're never going to be handled, you can just pop this off, get the piece out and glue it back on again. So PVA glue and clear glue are your friends. These glues are specifically designed for clear parts, so they don't fog up clear parts, but they have a million different uses. So, pieces in place, it's a snug fit anyway. The beauty of this stuff is, first of all, put it on some kind of placemat with blue tack on it so you don't spill it. It's a bit like your set and microsol. It's got a brush in the lid, which is brilliant. I love that. And then we're just going to slap it on. And what I'm doing is, because it will form this kind of like gel that goes hard and sticks everything in place, I want to make sure it goes over the piece into the crack between the piece and the other, and the, you know, the piece of the hull and the window frame and the window itself, and also on either side, just to give it more grip. If you can give it more edges and surfaces to grip to, the better. So I'm doing it around the lip here, just so it kind of has that to grip onto. And that's as much as I want to think about that, because that now should crust over and make a nice grippy little protective bubble around the piece, and it will hold it in place. Like I say, if you were to, you know, if you pick this up and prodded it, once it's all set, if you pick it up and jam it with your finger or something, obviously it's going to pop out. But for just sitting on display for all time, it's never going to come out. So I'm going to leave that to dry for about an hour. Leave it dry for about an hour, and when that's done, I'll go over it again with just normal craft PVA or white glue. If you're in the US, it's called Elmer's glue. Just purely because I don't want to use all my contact to clear. So I'll just get some PVA glue, which I've got like a litre bottle of it that cost me about £3 from the art store, the hobby store, and I'll just slap that all over, and that will just lock it in place. You could, of course, if you wanted to, go over this with some, say, gaffer tape or electrician's tape. Instead of gluing them in, you could actually just go over this with electrician's tape, tape them in place, and then go over that with PVA just to lock it all in. There's a million different ways you can do it, but I don't want to permanently attach these because I don't want to risk getting glue on the outside. And if I don't permanently attach them, I need to be able to get in if they ever pop out. So that's why I'm not going to glue these pieces in place on the final model. It'll be fine, don't worry. So I'll go and let these dry. What's next? I need to do that. I'll let these dry, and when we come back, we'll do the next step, I think, on the thruster belts, because they should be about dry by now. Back in a moment. Okay, right, while those windows are gluing in place, this is the fun bit. Right, it's time to get the engines looking a bit more like I've spent money on the turned aluminium parts. This is what we're trying to achieve. So, this is what the piece looks like after it's been painted with the Vallejo Duraluminium. It's a really, really nice colour. That's come out beautifully. It's actually come out shinier than when I did my tests. Now, you notice when I sprayed this, I was spraying at about 20 psi, but I was applying it really, really lightly in light mist coats. Kind of kept. It was quite spluttery at times because it's difficult to not pull the trigger that far. So that's now done. I forgot to mention, by the way, I've got tape around the end here, purely because this is where it actually attaches to the model, and I didn't want to have a build-up of paint and primer there, so I've masked that off so that when it goes into the model, it's going to fit. It's a snug fit anyway, so I didn't want to put a lot of paint and primer in there and not be able to get it in and have to scrape it all off, so I've masked that bit off. So what we want to do is get this looking metallic. What we want it to look like is basically this. Believe it or not, this is a plastic part. But I reckon if you were to put this alongside the £150 aluminium thruster bell parts you can get as an extra set, you'd probably tell them apart, but you'd have to think about it for a second. So this is what we're looking for. So how do we do this? But this is the fun bit. This is where we're going to use the C1 Metalizer. So, like I said, traditionally, when you do this, you do it over a glossy black base to get the most chromy effect. We don't want the most chromy effect. We just want this to look a bit more like metal and a little less like it's been painted to look like metal. So here's how you do it. First of all, you need the gloves, because this stuff, as you can see here, it goes everywhere, and once it's on, it's really hard to get off. So you have these. Now, the other thing you need, of course, is the C1 Metalizer Powder, which is this lovely, lovely black stuff. It's a super fine, I don't know what it is. I've been speaking to, I think it's Chris, the guy that makes this. Tell him how brilliant it is. It's just very super, super fine. It's a bit like graphite powder, but I don't think it is graphite, but it's very similar, and it's probably finer. And that's one of the secrets to it sticking so well, is it's so fine. So we've got the thing of powder. Now you do get gloves with this, but I've used them already, so I've got my own gloves. You also get a little mask, like a dust mask, because you don't want to breathe this stuff in. But I'm not going to use that now because obviously I'm trying to record this. But they do get a little mask with it, so wear that. You don't need a respirator, just a dust mask, just so you don't inhale any of the dust, because it goes everywhere. You also get a little applicator, which is just like the ones you get in, or very similar to the ones you get in Tamiya weathering packs. And you can probably buy these from, you know, beauty places that the ladies would frequent if you run out, but you probably won't. I mean, this, I've used this a few times. This will last me for years. And last thing you get in the kit itself, you do get little sort of buffers, but I ran out, so I've got these little sort of baby cotton buffing pad things. Just get the softest ones you can find. These look like little kind of crackers and make me hungry every time. But little soft, fluffy cotton pad things. You could use a cotton bud, but that's just more efficient and softer and gentler. So, thruster bell, little thingy, dip it in. The powder is all compacted at the bottom, so try and get some of that out. And the first step is super simple. You just do this. Just basically get your little applicator, get it on there in little circular motions, and just blob it on. And you'll notice at first it goes a bit dull. Don't be shy, really get loads of it on there. You can use as much as you want. Ideally when you do this, don't do it over a piece of kitchen roll, do it over a piece of paper, so that all the powder that falls onto the paper you can then later on rescue and put back into the pot. However, trust me, this stuff is going to last me so long that I don't think I'll be running out anytime soon. So I'm just going to work my way around really slowly. I may fast forward this because it may take a minute. Make sure I work it into all these little recesses here. But you can't go wrong with this. You can't put too much on. And I hope this is all on camera. Move that out of the way so you can see. I'm having trouble seeing where I've actually already done. But go for little circular motions. Okay, now we'll do the top bit. And it just goes kind of slightly dull when you put this on. And it looks just like kind of slightly dull metal. I'd be quite happy if this was the finish, to be honest, because this looks like slightly dulled, turned aluminium. Make sure I get it on this bit here, because this bit's visible. But you can work it into all the little grooves and recesses and cracks and raised details. Ping! I just pinged it and powder went everywhere across my desk. Sigh. So that's the outside done, I think, pretty much. Yeah, it looks like it. Okay, now we'll do thin side. Again, exactly the same again. Now I'm not going to focus too much on down below because you're not going to see that with the baffle that goes in the middle. So I'm just really focusing on the inside of the, also the most extreme end part of the bell. A little bit of this on here like that, you see? Go around the edge. Okay, so that's that done. Just knock off any excess. Now the fun bit. We're going to get the cloth. Again, just some super soft. You could use cotton buds, but it'd take you forever and you might scratch this stuff if you get too aggressive. So just use a big soft floppy cotton pad. What I'll do is, first of all, I'll go inside like this. Just get this bit out of the way. And you'll see some of the powder comes off, but not all. So I'll just get that bit done. You can rub fairly hard. You're basically just buffing this in, and by buffing it in, you're kind of lining up all the... I've said this before with graphite. My understanding is you're kind of lining up all the little particles so they all line up and reflect light a lot more efficiently. Now we'll do it on the outside. Watch the difference. Watch this. Give this a scrubbage. Scrub, 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 scrubbing. Scrubbing all the knot shine away. Oops, get my thumb in there, might be easier. This is really, I really enjoy doing this. It's really actually quite a lot of fun because it's, I have great admiration for any technique in model making that doesn't require any skill whatsoever. Because there's plenty of parts of model making where you have to have skill at what you're doing, like airbrushing and stuff, and you need to pay attention, be careful and thoughtful and plan your steps. But stuff like this, where it's just a case of put it on, buff it off. You can't go wrong. You can't do this wrong. If you did this and did it wrong, I'd be seriously questioning how you actually remember to breathe on a daily basis without somebody reminding you. So, we are pretty much done. And there we have the completed thruster bell. Let me get one of the other ones to show you. To compare. That's just aluminium, and that's now the C1 buffed. Now this isn't the way you're meant to use C1, or it's not the way ideally you would use it. You have to say you do it over a black coat and get that chrome effect, but there's nothing saying you can't do this. And I thought, I'll try this, and it worked. And it just gives me that wonderful metallic light shine. Now, the reason I thought of this was because when you put it over black, like I said on that spoon, where's that spoon gone? It is quite dark. See there, the difference. Because it's just really the powder and the black base showing through. So I thought, well, what if I put it over something that's already a bit shiny and quite light? So the light goes through the powder, reflects off this, and it's the colour of this that's affecting that. So you could put this powder over different coloured bases and get different effects. Although they would, you know, if I did that over, say, a gloss blue base, it would probably look a bit more bluey, but it would still be quite dark. I've spoken to Chris, and apologies if it's not your name, Chris. I'm doing it from memory because Facebook's on the other side of the room. And he says apparently yellow is not a good base colour to use, not the best one, because you won't get kind of, you can't just do gold by doing a yellow base. It worked, but it won't be gold. So you can, but you can do little experiments, but that is the difference. So I am super pleased with that. Now it does look super shiny. If I'd done it just with black base and then the C1, it would have looked even more chromy, and that would look like a toy. But we are going to be applying some weathering to this, and I'm not fully 100% sure if I'm going to gloss varnish it and then do the weathering, or just do the weathering and see what happens, because you can gloss varnish over this stuff. It doesn't come off. You can apply clear Tamiya paints over the top of it. It doesn't come off. It takes them. You can apply matte varnish over this and it's still pretty shiny. I have also done a test where I basically got some enamel weathering products. It was some of MIG's streaking grime, and just brushed it on really thick, and then after a little while just rubbed it off with a cotton bud, and it didn't take it off. It did dull it down a little bit, so all I did then was I just reapplied some more C1 and it made it back to shiny again. So I'll get the rest of these done and I'll make a decision as to how I'm going to weather it, whether I want to do the weathering straight onto the powder and see what happens. I might gloss varnish it, but then I will lose a little bit of the bling. Not much, but a little bit. It'll go from looking like metal to looking like it's been gloss varnished. So we'll have a think about that. But there is airbrush weathering to go on here as well, because we need to make this interior look filthy dirty. So I'll go and get the rest of the... I'm looking at this through the screen now and it's like, wahahaha. But if you're looking at getting nice metallic parts on your model, and you know you don't want to go all the alclad route and things like that, because frankly it's a pain in the bum with different lacquer paints, and lacquer paints are toxic and stink, just get some C1 and try it over different things. Try it over gloss blacks, try it over paints, other paints, and just see what happens. Anyway, I'll go and get all these done. Back in a moment. Oh, look at that. Oh. Okay, so now with all the thruster bells done, it's time to move on to the next step, which is to start the weathering. Now this is going to be fairly easy. First thing we're going to do is we're going to put a pin wash into all these little grooves, and for that we're going to use Engine Grime from Ammo by MIG, a MIG 1407. It's an enamel product, it's slightly out of focus. Now what we're going to be doing here is something a bit unusual. I've not gloss varnished this, I'm not going to. I'm going to apply it straight over what we've just done. So basically we put the C1 metalizer on there. We're now going to put an enamel pin wash on top of that. Now you might be thinking, well, that's the dumbest thing ever, because it's gonna you know, rub the powder off. This powder is incredibly tough. Here's one I did earlier on. It's gone into the recesses. We've put it on, let it dry and rubbed it off. It's gone into the recesses, and it does affect the powder a little bit, but it affects it in a way that I actually want. I hope that's in focus. Let me just make sure that's in focus for you. There we go. It actually tarnishes it a little bit just around where it's placed on the piece, and that's what I want, because if you look at the actual metal thruster bells on the filming model, they're not nice and shiny. They're tarnished and dulled like that, and that to me is perfect, because it leaves some shiny areas, but it also leaves some dull tarnished areas. So that's exactly what we're looking for. So this couldn't be easier. I've got myself a fine brush and slightly bigger brush. This is an old knackered one. And all we're going to do, I've got a little bit of oil paint thinners mixed into the streaking grime that I've got in my little dish. What I'm going to do is basically get it on there. And I'm not going to put a lot on, but I'm going to be reasonably generous. I'm going to do it on camera as well. Reasonably generous. I'm not going to really move the brush around much on the surface. I don't want to be dragging the brush around, because I don't want to, you know, knowingly and willingly dislodge any powder. But it's kind of, again, it's kind of a hybrid between a pin wash and a gunk wash. So I'm really just touching it. I'm not really dragging the brush. I'm just touching it to the surface. And as best I can, I'm going to try and keep it to the recessed and grooved areas. It will no doubt go outside the line here and there. And where it sits on the powder, it will tarnish it. But again, I kind of want that effect. Because at the end of the day, the final effect is just one of this kind of slightly tarnished metal. I mean, these look beautiful as they are. You see here I've got another finer brush and I'm just touching it to this ridge. And it's going to be splobby around the edge. That's fine because we're going to clean it up once it's dried for a little while. But that's the effect I want. I want it to look a bit used. Okay, right, that's had about 45 minutes. Look, it's dry enough now to remove. And this is where it becomes a mixture of a gunk wash and pin wash. A couple of things to note. I'm going to use cotton buds, so you need some cotton buds. Again, like before, like I said earlier on or in the last episode or whenever it was, I can't remember now. It's all a blur. Good quality cotton buds are always a winner because they don't put loads of fluff everywhere. And you'll note I am not wearing gloves. Why? Because I want this to be not nice and clean and shiny. Now you might be thinking, well, you're just going to take the powder off with your hands. No. If you put this stuff on, this C1, and then you handle the piece, you might get some fingerprints on, but you can just wipe them off. It's really, really durable. It's more durable than MacLeod paints. So, you know, I'm doing all this. It's not coming off. I've been handling all these parts. It's great. So, how do we do this? Well, what we want to do is we want to end up with something like this. Now, I don't know if this is coming out of the camera at all because it's a shiny piece, but it just looks tarnished. The luster's gone a bit in places, and in some places it's still shiny. The pin wash isn't really that evident, but it's there. You can just about tell it's tinted it and stained it a little bit. So that's what we're looking for. Now on camera, I don't know how this comes out till I review the footage, but it might just look nice and clean and shiny, but it's not. If you look at it in the light, you can see there is a textural difference to it. It's shiny and not shiny and matte in some places, and that's what we're after. So how do we do this? Dead easy. Get your cotton bud and just wipe. Now, like we did when we were doing the pin wash on the rest of the ship, I'm keeping it parallel to the edge. I'm not going in like that because I don't want to get the paint out from inside the grooves. I just want to get it off. I'm going to put my visor on so I can see. I want to get it out. So you'll find what you do at first, and you'll go through a lot of cotton buds. You work your way around. And what you'll see is, because it's all coming off on the cotton bud, but because the paint's only had about half an hour or so, it's coming off, but it's also kind of smearing around, which is fine. We want that. We want that. Okay, so that's off all the raised parts there. Now for these bits, the little raised bits on the edge, we're just going to go over with the cotton bud. We're going to get a clean one. You will go through a lot of cotton buds. Oh, one other thing as well, that C1 powder, it's all over my hand, you can see there. I spilt a load on my jeans. Yeah, it doesn't come off very easily. I've had to put them in the wash and I don't know if it'll come out, so they may be ruined, I don't know. So if you're using C1 Metalizer Powder, just keep it on a piece of paper and don't spill it on your jeans. But yeah, it's on my hand, you can see it there, I rubbed it on the table, it's still there. So anyway, yes, this ridge here. Again, we're going to go parallel. We'll probably take most of this off, but that's absolutely fine. We're just going to run along the lip, the ridge, and you can see how it's smearing around in the middle here. And it's kind of blooming out. Again, that's absolutely fine, because then what we're going to do is we're going to take the cotton bud and we're going to work it in the middle bit, and we're going to put quite a bit of pressure on here, a fair bit of pressure. Now, we're not going to go over the ridge here, and we're not going to go over this ridge here. We're just going to work it into the middle. And what this is doing is it's removing most of the paint, but it will leave some of the paint. But where it does, it's blending it, it's softening the edges so you don't get tide marks and watermarks. It's just softening it just a little tiny bit. And you are still getting some off. And it's also, as well, at the same time, rebuffing the metalizer. So we're just going to go in. And for people that do lots of shiny metal things on models, this is probably anathema and you're probably cringing right now. But I don't want it to look brand new. I want it to look tarnished and a bit used. So we're just going to go in, do lots of little circles. And you can see here we've got this nice bright patch here, do it on camera, nice bright patch here, surrounded by the slightly dull patches. And in reality, what's probably happening is it may well be that the dull patches are either where the C1's been jumbled, the particles have been jumbled up and it's not reflecting as much, or it may just have removed some of the C1 and what you're seeing underneath is the original aluminium paint. Could be, I'm no expert. Okay, so that's all been done. All the engine bells are now weathered and they're looking nice and metally and slightly tarnished. So the next step, going to be the last step for the weathering the engine bells. And it's probably not going to come out on camera, I will be honest with you. It's hard to see in real life, so good luck seeing this on film, but hopefully it'll tell you how to do it. We're going to do some streaking or weathering, and we're going to make basically, if it comes out, again, it probably won't, this effect, which I doubt will come out on camera, but I'll twirl it around anyway. It's kind of like carbon scoring and sort of dirt and residue from the thrusters, but it's kind of ever so slightly streaky and stripy. I was going to do it with the airbrush, but I realised it's going to be a lot faster and a lot easier to do it with oil paints and a bit of sort of semi-dry brushing. So we're going to use two colours. We're going to use, first of all, my favourite in the world, 502 Abteilung Starship Filth, and also 502 Abteilung Engine Grease. Anyway, dead easy. First of all, you take your, what's this one, engine grease, get some on the brush. Don't worry about putting them on a palette, we're not being that prissy. You get yourself some tissue. You don't want to do a complete dry brush, you want to leave quite a bit on the brush, but not too much. So you want to get it almost to the point where you're dry brushing, but not quite, so it's a bit more than a dry brush. And all I'm going to do first of all, and I hope this comes out on camera, is get the paint on the inside. I'm going to work from the inside out. I'm going to fan it like this so it follows the direction of thrust. Now, it's really hard for me to see because the light doesn't get in there. But I'm going to follow the direction of thrust so it looks like stuff coming out of the engine bell. So I'm going to put a bit more on there because that's not quite much. Now, I normally have a light shining into the bell so I can see it, but unfortunately that light is what the camera's mounted to, so that's not going to happen. So I'm just working it around the middle. First of all, you're not going to see beyond that bit because of the baffle. And then I'm going to go in again, and I'm just flicking the brush from the back to the front. Okay, so that's that bit, and I don't know if it'll come out, but it's got a slight tint to it now. So what I'm going to do now is get the other brush, and we're going to get the Starship Filth, and we're going to do exactly the same. Again, you're not taking off as much paint as you would if you're doing a dry brush. So what you want to do is, first of all, just go around that middle part where the baffle's going to go, just to get some paint on there. And then just flick upwards. Go from the back to the front. I'm putting the brush right down the bottom. I'm flicking it up. Flick it on. And that's really it. So what we'll do one last thing, is get some more of the engine grease. I know this isn't coming out on camera at all well. Now we are going to do a proper dry brush here. So I get most of the paint off. And we're just going to do a bit of flicking on the edge, just to get a bit of staining around the edge of the nozzle. And that is done. I'll go and rub that fingerprint off because I did get some paint on my finger. That's done. And that's all I was really looking to do. And again, apologies if that doesn't come out at all. I know given the lighting it won't. But that's the kind of effect I want. Now when that dries, it will dry and go, hopefully, reasonably matte. So it'll contrast with the shiny. I've done all the little thrusters as well for underneath. So I'll go and clean all this up and clean the oil paint off my hands, get rid of any fingerprints on those thrusters, and we'll do that last step. And I think then we've just got the tape to take off the cockpit. Yeah, I'm not looking forward to that. Oh, unless I think of something else I need to do. Oh, we need to get the thruster bells on, there's obviously. Yeah, back in a minute. Okay, and with that, we are done. I've added the thruster bells, put the thruster bells underneath and the feet, added the RCS thruster quads to each shoulder, painted these bits black, put the little thrusters onto the schnoz, finished. Oh, dead excited. It's happy noises, happy noises, happy noises. I can't put into words how made up I am at how this has come out. To me, this is the thing of beauty, and it taps into my childhood and my memories of the show and the model of the ship and everything else. I can't tell you. And this isn't me talking about how good my work has been on it. You know, no artist of any kind of a good quality will ever say, I'm a good artist. They'll always say, I suck. Good artists always doubt their own work. So I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the quality of the kit, the build, the loving accuracy, the effort they've put into it to make it look as accurate as possible. The size of it, just how it looks to your eyes, there's nothing you can complain about. It's just a gorgeous, gorgeous thing. And this is why the Eagle Transporter is my all-time favourite sci-fi vehicle. Second to it, very closely second, would be the USS Reliant. This is my all-time favourite because it's believable. You could see NASA making this in the Apollo era, sort of. Forget the fact that there's nowhere to put the fuel. It's got a believability to it. So I'm so pleased with it. Normally I'd have my model on a spinny thing, so you can see it going right. Yeah, it's not going to happen because it's too big for the desk. So I'll turn it round and I'll show you to the other side. Got to be careful. As I said before, these bits aren't glued on, these are loose. So I can turn it round for you. You can see the back end. Ooh, there, madam. So there we go. That's butt end of the ship. I'm so pleased with how the thruster bells came out. I kind of winged it when I did these. I had the idea to use the gloss and the paint and the powder, and I thought it might come out looking quite good. I didn't even begin to think it would actually come out looking just like turned and slightly worn aluminium. I'm so pleased with that. They just have this natural shine to them. Now I'm not going to sort of start holding it up for you for the camera because these things will fall off, and I don't want to handle it too much. So I will take some photographs and I'll overlay those, and I'll show you with the lights on as well. But I just can't tell you how much I've enjoyed doing this. I have to say thank you to Pete Mate and the gang at Emals for letting me do this. I have to also say I hate you for making me give it back. But never mind. Somebody asked me if I'd get another one just for myself. No, because much as I want one, I've got nowhere to put it yet. I've got to keep this for a month or two before I can take it back to E-Models. I've got nowhere to put it. It's too big for my cabinets. So when I take this to E-Models, I said to Pete, I'm going to have to bring it back and bring a big floppy brush to get all the dust off because it's just going to sit on my shelf for now. The feet do work. You've got the boingy feet there. I can't do it without you not seeing it. You've got the boingy feet, which work really, really nicely. One of those thruster quads is about to slide off. Okay, so I've gone to the handheld wibbly wobbly camera, so my apologies. But you can see now how the lighting turned out, and I am really, really super pleased with it. It's not particularly bright, but I did that kind of by design. I didn't want them to be super bright because, you know, you see this model sometimes and they put these massive, huge bulbs in there at 1,000,000 volts, and it just looks a bit weird. This is more like a subtle glow. If you see it in a lit room, you might notice it, but you probably wouldn't. When you see it in sort of semi-darkness, it really stands out as it's the soft glow of the lights in the cockpit. So I am super pleased with how that came out. Okay, now we take a look at the butt end of the ship, the business end, and there's them thruster bells. I am super, super pleased with how they came out. I think they just look gorgeous. Just using some paints and the powder, the C1 powder, I think I've made, again, I'm not going to blow my own trumpet, but I think I've done a pretty good job of reproducing, firstly, the turned aluminium bells on the real thing, on the real filming model, but also reproducing the ones you can get for this kit, doing a reasonable facsimile. They look like they were metal. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody walked past this and said, oh, you've got the metal bell set. No. So again, not blow my own trumpet, but hopefully the method I showed you will show you it's not actually that hard. We'll have a look inside. It might not come out because it's dark in there. Is it going to come out? No. You can't see the baffle in there, I don't think. It probably might come out on screen, I don't know. Let's have a look. Maybe. But you can certainly see the effect of the streaking that we did, the streaking and the staining. It just gives that nice, if you see the shine going across there, as you move it around, you can see those streaks, and they're more like just heat streaks rather than actual paint streaks. So I'm really pleased with how they came out. And again, like I showed, not particularly complicated, something that any of you can do. Doesn't require a massive amount of skill or technique or knowledge, just small paints, some enamels, the powder and some paints, done. Okay, so that's back to normal with the camera now, so I think that's going to do us. We are done. Nothing left to do on it. I hope you've enjoyed this build. I hope if you're thinking about getting this kit, you do pick one up, this or the, this special edition or the normal edition. And I hope you found the video build series useful to help you build yours. As always, thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much to the guys at eModels for supplying this kit for me to build. As you know, this is filmed for them, and they are my sponsors. But do go along to their store, emodels.co.uk. To me, it's the best online UK retailer at all. They've got tons of stuff, paints, models, kits, tools, resources, anything you need, they've got it. We always say if they haven't got it, you don't need it. If there is something specific you want and it's not on the website, it just means either A, it's just temporarily out of stock, drop them an email and they'll let you know when it's back in. Or B, maybe it's something they don't stock normally, but they can probably get it for you. So drop them an email and say, hey, can you get me X, Y, or Z? And they probably will be able to get one from their distributor. So it's always worth giving them a shout if there's something you want that they haven't got. But they've usually got lots of different options for everything. So if there's something you want and there's not the exact one, there's probably something just as good anyway. But I think that's going to do us. So thank you so much for watching. Do take care of yourselves. Go make something awesome. Go be awesome. And until next time, adios amoebas.